We're live on YouTube so that the entire world can see what we bring to the Expo, because this is a cool place, but not the entire world. Well, sometimes it feels like the entire world is here, right? But the truth is that most people aren't at the Expo, and we don't want them to miss out on the opportunities of the future. And today we have a kind of, filled program with a lot of stuff happening, a lot of people coming here. So that the entire world can see what we bring to the Expo. Because this is a cool place, but not the entire. So what you heard there was essentially the repeat sound from the YouTube live broadcast from the pavilion. It's delayed with a couple of seconds. And unless we close it down on our computers here, you will hear it, you'll hear everything the entrepreneurs say multiple times, but it will be very, very strange to hear it in the same type of context. So you closed it down now. So now we're live out there, but not on your computer. Very good. Well, I guess it's countdown now. It's 5 minutes to go. And I'll have to check the schedule again.
Johanna, it would be great if you can walk us through who are the people who are joining and what is the Smorgasbord 2.0 that is the topic for the pavilion and the food.
Yes, no, let's do that. Let's talk about what's on stage today. A smorgasbord. I don't know how many of you have had a proper Swedish smorgasbord, but that's, so to say, our national traditional, not a dish, gathering of dishes in the Swedish food tradition. And it consists of several dishes that you eat, in special order if you're, if you're truly a believer in the smorgasbord tradition, or you can just pick whatever you want and put that on your plate in a, big, messy, pile of food. But we use the analogy of the smorgasbord, which is, has been seized upon of the world. So smorgasbords can be, found everywhere these days. And we say, well, the future food system is like a smorgasbord. It's not just one thing that's going to fix the world and turn it into something healthy and sustainable. It's a bunch of stuff. And we need all of that at the same time. So we just call it a smorgasbord. And today, just so you know what you will be listening to, we have interviews with the following people. We start here now in a couple of minutes time with Tom Johansson from Hooked Foods. And Hooked Foods is basically producing fish, but without fish. It's plant-based fish analogs, as we call it in the industry. Fish, well, it tastes like tuna or salmon, but it's made out of plants. It's really, really cool and good. And that's going to hit a dish or plates close to you soon. Then we're going to talk about mushrooms and fungi, how you can grow that in bioreactors in a super smart and fast way in order to feed the world. So fungi, I don't know if you've ever encountered fungi and how fast they grow. Well, they grow like crazy. And, if you can turn that into a protein source, then you have the potential to feed the entire planet without ever having going into the a slaughterhouse again and kill a cow or a sheep or something like that. So Ram is also super cool. Came from India to Sweden, set up his company, first of all to earn his PhD and then set up a company around his science. Then we're going to cook some stuff with the wonderful Swedish chef, Gustav Johansson. And he's made a point out of doing traditional Swedish dishes like meatballs, but do them in a vegan way. So we'll also be talking about some traditional Swedish dishes and the vegan versions of them. Then we're going to talk to a wonderful venture capitalist, one of the founding fathers of the Swedish venture capital system, called Dan Walker. He's been around forever and ever, so he's old. He's even older than I am. And he's turned his fortunes into a fish farm in Zambia. And by many, it's claimed to be the most well-organized fish farm in the entire continent of Africa. So we'll talk a little bit about his journey. Then we're going to talk with a wonderful woman called CJ Jones, who is an Australian investment banker, moved to Kenya, turned farmer, and now she's in for a project to feed the masses by using waste, cooking waste products, and then conserving those with the help of Swedish technology from the company Tetra Pak, and then feeding, the conserved goods are then sent into the cities of Kenya to support people with nutritious meals at a fraction of the cost of going to the restaurant. Then we're going to talk about proteins. I mean, we all know that sweet sugar, those are counted as carbohydrates. But here is one of the rising food stars of Europe called MI, and they actually produce designer proteins to be used as sweeteners. So now this time you can probably build muscles and eat sweet stuff at the same time. That's wonderful. Then we're going to have Josh Tetrick, who is the illustrious founder of Just Eat, the world's leading manufacturer of lab-made meats. Come and join us for a short talk on, how to produce lab-made meat, or that's chicken actually they're doing today. And I think it's coming actually to the UAE, not in a not too distant future. Before we close up with the coolest wasabi farmer in the world, a fellow called Ragnar Atli Thomasson, straight out of Iceland. And then you might wonder, what has Iceland anything to do with food? Well, food is energy. So there are a lot of stuff here happening at the pavilion, in the Swedish pavilion, at the co-creation stage, where we co-create the future. And, I think we're about to go. Tom is here. Tom, well, let him in, for God's sake. We don't want to keep him waiting. Tom, hook. We're hooked on you, Tom. Please show your wonderful face.
Hello.
There you are, Tom. Good to have you here. So how's life? I can tell you it's sunny and warm here in Dubai. What's life like in Stockholm?
I mean, it's at least sunny here in Stockholm, so I'll take that. But the warmth not so much. I think it's around 0 degrees. Moving into spring, I would say. It's typical Sweden.
Oh, moving into the Swedish version of spring, that is.
Exactly.
Okay, very good. So good to have you here. So we're here in the Swedish Pavilion, where we at Sweden Food Tech, we bring essentially our yearly conference, the Big Meet, here to the Expo in order to talk about the next gen food system and all the aspects of food. And Tom, you have done something that I find is absolutely tantalizing, which is to make sure that that we can work something out without having to kill a lot of fish. But we'll start with a short movie.
Jag tar fisken. Vill du också ha fisken?
Jag kan ta tonfisk istället. Jaha.
Well, Tom, you have to explain, why did you produce that movie, dumping all that fish in the head of a Swedish pop star, or rather, how much did you have to pay him in order to become that?
Yeah, a lot of questions, I understand, but I think it's it's a really big, it was a big thing for us, because this was sort of we just got into retail for the first time. We just been a few restaurant chains in Stockholm, bigger cities before this happened, and it was time for us to really establish what we were about. And what we're about to talk is really, our mission is to lead the transition to a healthier seafood ecosystem. So it's all about changing the way we perceive seafood today to in a much more sustainable way. And to do that, we need to talk about the problems that we are facing with fish and the seafood industry. And one of the main things with that is the overfishing that we're seeing, especially from wild harvest, where we have close to 90% of species are now fully exploited or overfished. So that's like a main challenge we really want to talk about in this movie. And very few know that if you take, if you eat a fish, it comes with a lot of bycatch, which is why we, produced this movie, which is essentially Danny the pop star, also actually a shareholder in Hooked. So he's invested in Hooked in our latest fundraise. So he's in it for the long term, and we love working with him. So he was in the movie. We didn't pay him that much because of that. He wants to do this for a good cause. And we produced a movie with him ordering fish, and then, of course, it comes with all the bycatch that falls over him in a very, disruptive way for the viewer, I would say.
Okay, but Tom, if you open up a can of Hooked, what's in there? It's not tuna, it's not salmon. What is it?
It's 100% plant-based. So it's our first product is based on wheat and soy, and then we have algae for the flavor and also for omega-3s in our upcoming product, the salmon substitute. So it's 100% plant-based, natural ingredients and flavoring.
So wonderful. So what's your background? Are you, how come you started this company?
Fair question. I mean, I'm not a food scientist or a product developer. I come more from the commercial side of things. I'm educated an engineer and come from a small family business out in the archipelago. Worked a lot with my parents there, but then went the route to be employed. I was at Procter & Gamble before I started Hooked, understanding like the consumer behaviors, the retailer landscape, and what I saw was essentially, how much is happening in this category, in the plant-based category. And I also, always questioned, whether my time being spent at Procter & Gamble was invested the best way. Selling razors was what I did back then. So Gillette and Venus in Nordics, and selling razors over a long time, spending a lot of hours. Didn't feel like I made that significant impact. And seeing this really inspiring category with pioneers like Oatly, Beyond Meat, and other players just changing the way we see food, and challenge us to really change, because it's such a big and important issue in terms of environmental challenges as a total. I thought it was really inspiring, and also then looking into what can I do. I mean, being very close to the archipelago, eating a lot of fish in my childhood, I thought like, why is there no plant-based substitute to fish? Maybe there's a reason. And then you're checking in. Is the fish the answer to all our questions for the future? When it was clear that it wasn't, it's a limited resource just as anything else, and with the growing population, it's a challenge for us. So we need to change the way we eat seafood, because otherwise we won't have anything left. And it goes even bigger when you think about the marine ecosystems and the oceans. That produces up to 80% of the oxygen we breathe. It captures almost 50% of all the carbon dioxide. If the marine ecosystem dies, then we have a very, very tough challenge, more or less uninhabitable planet. So it's like you can make a lot of big, dystopian images in front of yourself, but the conclusion was that it's a big challenge with fish that we need to solve with more disruptive solutions, and plant-based was definitely needed. So
exactly, and then what you've done, I think, when I grew up, when I was a kid, the vegetarian or vegan alternatives, they were always mushy lentils, and it tasted not so good. I can use another how they tasted, but I won't. But what I think is interesting with Hooked is actually that you've nailed the taste. I mean, suddenly you can eat tuna or salmon without eating tuna and salmon, but you still get the same type of experience. Tell me, how hard was it to really mimic the taste experience of tuna and salmon by just using plants?
Yeah, thank you so much. Those are kind words. I think we still have a lot to do in the space. I think we can get even better on the taste experience, but we're definitely in the very right direction compared to 10 years ago. It wasn't close to food, in my opinion, but now we're really, really close. And it's a challenge, of course. Like it's really hard. And now it feels like less of a challenge when we have sort of gone through it, but this is like a 3 years journey. But when we started, it was very unsure, but we felt it should be very possible if you can, develop milk, alternative milk, beef, chicken, why not fish? Like, I understand the fillet texture is like a big challenge, but if we make it into smaller pieces, which is what we have done, so that's of course a really important thing for us to manage to cut cost and complexity and development, investments and so on at our early stage as a startup with very low amounts of money. It's been a long journey, but now when we have most of the answers, it feels, it makes a lot of sense that it is possible. Now it's just like, how can we improve it and take it from here, and continuing, to challenge with even better innovation in the alternative seafood space.
But that's lovely. But Tom, tell me, I mean, and you don't do this just for the local Swedish market, or not with that local Swedish market in mind, do you? This is a revolution you'd like to bring to the world, I guess.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, the problem, we want to bring as much absolute impact as possible, and we're not going to save the oceans by our own for starters. Like, this is an effort for all of us to do collectively. But I think if we are really serious about making a change for our ocean, then it's not about just serving some about 10 million people in Sweden. That's not going to do a big change for the global challenge that we have with the oceans. So of course we are right now in a place where we have good products, we have a brand that resonates a lot and challenges a lot and brings people, makes plant-based seafood attractive to consumers but also to customers, and we have a production that's also scalable, so we can really scale now. It's all about now establishing us really strongly in Sweden. As soon as we have that, we are considering ourselves a VC-driven or investor-driven company, because investors, we think we can help us grow a lot and solve this problem a lot faster, which is we have a sense of urgency at Hooked. We really want to solve this as soon as possible. So yes, of course, Europe is in target for us as a next step after Sweden.
Europe is a target, and the UAE, where we are right now, when will you come here?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. I think that's hard to tell. Like, we don't even know what's what's around the corner. It feels like so. But it's. Let's see. After Europe, maybe.
After Europe, maybe. Okay, because this is interesting, because these solutions, they can scale without fishing vessels everywhere. They can just scale because you can can these stuff with industrial logic and good recipes, and then you can push it out to the world. So how much of the tuna market, let me put it this way instead, how many tunas and dolphins do you intend to save? Because dolphins is a bycatch of tuna, we all know that. Have you quantified that?
We have at one point, actually. We have a KPI. We're measuring every month, like how much fish we save. But that is not actually including bycatch, which we are working on to actually include there, because it makes a lot of sense that it should be.
Well, let's keep out the dolphins. Just go for the tuna then. How many tunas will you save?
Yeah, I think I will need to get back to you. I don't have the exact number, because it depends, right? If it's like in a year or 5, but I don't have the number on top of my mind, unfortunately. But it's like that is the ultimate goal. So yeah.
But I think isn't this kind of cool? Because when you start to reinvent the food system and come with new food products, a tiny little company from Sweden can be one of the instrumental savers of tunas out there in the world. So you can really have an effect on the global tuna industry for the better of the environment. Isn't that pretty cool?
I think that's amazing. I am like really grateful, but also really surprised that it's something that we all can do. We are in an ecosystem today where we can really bring ideas to reality, and I think most of us would be surprised how many people are there to help, and institutions, co-manufacturers, students, and talents that wants to work for something that makes an impact. It's really, it's a really humbling experience, because I think just bringing a lot of people together when you have such a clear problem you want to solve, and not only people but also organizations and universities, whatever it is, it's really cool. So I think, it's not only us as a Swedish company, we're doing it together with many other both companies but also organizations. So I think it's really cool what people can do, I would say, when trying to solve a problem.
Solving problems together. No, if you want to hear more about Hooked and taste the products, you should also make sure to join the Sweden Food Tech Big Meet 1st to 3rd of June this year in Stockholm live. And then you can get to taste the product as well, I can assure you. Tom, it has been a pleasure having you with us today. And I wish you the best of luck with your efforts in saving tunas and bringing delicious food to the world. Thank you a lot.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
So folks, that was Tom from Hooked, one of the Swedish entrepreneurs out there trying to redefine what a food system is with new cool products. Now, I hope we have Ram Kumar lined up on stage here on our virtual stage. And please let Ram in. I guess, Ram, do you see us here in Dubai? Because we're longing to see you. And I think we also have a movie to show, right? Oh, Ram, there you are. It's so good to see you, man. Lovely, lovely, lovely. So tell me, I know you're not in the same side of Sweden as our previous speaker, Tom, was. So tell me a bit. No, I can tell you it's 28 degrees and sunshine here. How is your day?
Yeah, indeed. I mean, we don't have much sun here as always, but it's getting better.
We'll bring some sunshine back from you, perhaps from the faces of all the people here in the audience. So, Jennifer, I think we have a movie. Let's start with the movie, and then we'll get back to you, Ram, in a second. So Ram, tell us, what did we see there in this short video?
Well, what you have seen is actually one of the largest mycoprotein production facility in the whole of Europe. And we produce mycoprotein, which is more like an ingredient for any vegan food companies. And this facility is actually brand new. We just moved in quite a while, like 1 year ago. So it's quite new technology per se.
But tell me, you talk about mycoprotein, but what is mycoproteins for all of us who really don't have a clue?
Well, the closest you can compare is actually mushrooms. So what we are doing is basically like producing fungi in a large tank, more like brewing beer. But in opposition to like what you normally see as mushrooms, we grow it as threads. So what you see in the top part of the mushroom, the fruiting body, is not what we actually work with. We work with the threads that is kind of below the ground. And that is what we grow in liquid medium. And then we produce fungi out of it. And that's more like the closest comparison you can have is like cotton threads in water. And imagine you take that out from this large big tanks, you press that out, and then you get a chicken-like fillet. And that is like super high rich in protein. It's 60% protein, 12% fat. And that is what we call it mycoprotein. So it's a whole living cell of a fungi that is much more nutritious than many other plant-based or animal-based protein ingredient.
So this is ridiculous. So it's like you can grow food like you brew beer, and then you just squeeze out the water and you have a chicken breast essentially. How cool is that? But tell me, I heard you sometimes say it grows really, really fast.
Indeed, it only needs like 24 hours. So when we start the fermenter, when we put all the things in, the fungi is like kind of a super bug, it grows very fast. It's like 24 hours, it's out. And then you can make burger patties and everything that you need with this mycelium in like less than a day. Imagine how cool that can be. And it can grow in middle of deserts.
So you're saying basically you put the fungi in, give it some nutrition, the next day you harvest it.
Yeah,
I mean, like
exactly.
that means you essentially can grow unlimited amounts of protein.
Indeed, we can produce like as much as we want. It's just the size of the tank that is kind of deciding the quantity. So if we big larger tanks or more number of tanks, we can produce as much as we need. And we don't need any land, we don't need much water. We can just, as I said, like produce in middle of deserts. It's kind of a cool technology. It's coming up a lot more of our type of companies. And we think like this is the future.
Okay, but tell me, is it super expensive to do this, or is this a technology that you think will eventually conquer the world of protein production?
Well, it's not that as cheap, of course, but at the same time, it's not that expensive either. So I would say like we stand somewhere between the traditional plant-based production facilities like, soy and pea, and perhaps like the cultured meat, which is like super expensive. So we are somewhere in between.
So basically, you could say that this is going to be like a chicken breast, though it's potentially cheaper than a chicken breast and definitely more nutritious than a chicken breast.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, our ambition is actually when we grow up faster, when we scale it quicker, then it could be, much more cheaper than chicken actually.
This is absolutely amazing. It's kind of fun because I've tasted. You gave me a sample of your early stage nuggets, and I took them home and I cooked them. And audience out there, what they tasted like? Nuggets. I thought I was at. I know I didn't think I was at McDonald's, and my kitchen is nicer than McDonald's, but it was a really interesting experience, and knowing that this was fungi and not dead animals. So I think this is a super cool one. But Ram, I mean, like you're a preeminent researcher. You are one of the leading experts in the world on how to grow mycoproteins. And how come we haven't really discovered the world of mycoproteins until now? Because fungi have been around forever.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, fungi has been there for like ages. And if you go to like, any Asian countries, we have been using it for the different cuisines. But the commercial part of it hasn't been like in the limelight until now, because primarily there was not need for it. But now you see the difference in the consumer acceptance of things, and also like people want to try like sustainable food, and that trend is actually what is now putting us in the limelight. So it's I would say like it's a market that is actually demanding it now.
So basically what we say here is we reached the nexus now between technology to grow things like the mycoprotein in tanks like you're doing, the acceptance of the audience or the public in order to eat this, and also perhaps the stress coming from climate-related anxiety in order for people to change their behaviors. But tell me a bit more, we've talked about chicken breasts here. What can this mycoprotein really mimic in the future? Is that basically up to spices and other things you put into it, or does it have limitations?
Pretty much like we are now starting with like the alternative meat sector, which is now booming, and which is what actually the most important segment of market that we are aiming at. And that includes like nuggets and burgers and meatballs and whatnot. I mean, like that is a segment that we are right now in. And then we see that our fungi can mimic exactly what a meat look like or a chicken fillet look like. But in the future, this could also be an ingredient for a lot more things. Like we have done, starting from cookies to plant-based beverages, and those kind of things are also like one sector that we could venture into in the future. So we have basically made like 30 different prototypes, starting with like all these meat replacement products, and also like different segments of beverages and whatnot. So that is what actually we are aiming for in the future. It becomes like a standard ingredient for different kind of food materials.
So basically adding a new ingredient to the pantry that we didn't have before, at least not at this scale. So tell me, how, Ram, you're originally not from Sweden, you're from India, right? You came to Sweden to do your research, and then you started the company in Sweden. What do you think that Sweden can bring, or did bring you, and that can bring to the world when it comes to the change of the food system into something that is healthy and sustainable?
Absolutely. I mean, if you see it from in a global perspective, like Scandinavia or Sweden, these countries are always in ahead of like the technological advancements. And that is exactly what we are seeing in terms of like this plant-based movement and the consumer acceptance. This part of the world is actually like the first mover in many things. and that is not exceptional from the plant-based sector, and also like all the sustainable eating. So that sustainable lifestyle is actually already in the DNA of the people, and that is what is driving all these changes now, and that is what we are leveraging on being in Sweden. So I mean, as you said, I'm originally from India, but I can't expect Indians to eat sustainable plant-based food in the next 5-10 years. That is coming. It is in the way, whereas Sweden is already ahead of it, and that is where we take advantage of being in a fast-growing market, in a first mover market, so to say. I can't hear you.
Okay, Ram, I think
Oh,
you're
yeah.
back.
Yes, I'm back. I lost you again. Hello.
But look forward to talking to you soon again, Ram. And then we'll make a bigger splash at the big meet. Okay. Tastiest.
Thank you. Thanks. Thank you. Thanks, Ivan. Now I think you have got it, right?
Yes, I think, Ram, I think you're, yeah, we hear you. But the question is if you, yes. So kids, sorry, Ram, do you hear me now? Sorry, guys. We're continuing the program. Sorry for just having a short little technical break here. It was lovely to see you all on stage. I welcome you up here shortly again. Here, Ram. Here, Ram.
Yes, I'm here.
Good. Then I'll just grab the microphone again, and we'll just finish off here. And Ram, thank you for coming here and joining us. And sorry for the technical glitch that we had. We will now continue with the next speaker here in our lineup of just adjust the camera a little bit again. You can see the beautiful sun in the background here. For those of you who are following us now on YouTube live, we're sending directly from the wonderful, wonderful Swedish Pavilion at Expo 2020 in Dubai. And we're here together with a bunch of super cool entrepreneurs from all around the world to talk about the next generation of food. And we've recently just had to break off Ram Kumar from Mikorena, one of the coolest entrepreneurs on the planet when it comes to building the next gen proteins that we saw coming out of his magnificent factory. And now we have none less than Gustav Johansson, Sweden's leading vegan chef, to come here and talk to us a bit about food. And you give a thumbs up. That means you hear me, which I think is super
I can
exciting.
hear you. I
okay,
can
very
hear
good,
you.
because Ram couldn't right now. Okay, so very good. Let's hope that we've had a wonderful session with you here, Gustav. And great to see you all here in the audience. And Gustav, tell me what you're doing.
Yeah.
You're a chef, but you shied away from a lot of the stuff. But before Gustav, before I let you in, we have a video, right, to show you.
Yeah.
And all the others out there. Let's run the video first, and then we'll get into what Gustav does.
Yeah. Hopefully it will tell you some about it.
Our mission as chefs to show that it can be easy, it can be tasty, it can be familiar. My name is Johansson, and I'm the culinary leader of the new plant-based restaurant Choo in Stockholm. But I'm also a Swedish food blogger. I've been food blogging for 10 years at my blog Jävligt Gott, and that has made me be able to release a lot of cookbooks and tons of other interesting stuff here in Sweden. Reducing the amount of meat in our food system is one of the most efficient ways to reduce both carbon emissions, but also working with deforestation, biodiversity, acidification, fishing of the oceans. All of those things connect to our overusage and over-exploitation of the world, more or less, because producing meat is very, very resource intense. Choo is a plant-based restaurant, but the whole idea is that it's not first and foremost a plant-based restaurant. That should be like the obvious main ground hygiene part of it. The ambition with Choo is more, I say it's kind of being like the Stockholm's food world's version of Tesla. But first and foremost, it should be a fast, a fun, high-tech, good-looking piece of car. But then in the fifth case, it's also electric and good for the climate. And that's the same thing with Choo. It should first and foremost be a a great experience with great service, great wine, great food experiences. And then it's also plant-based, but that to us, we want to be the new normal. We want to showcase what's possible with all these amazing products and all this amazing know-how and techniques that's actually available today. And we put it to the test and show that you can do everything that people love, all the classic dishes, all the classic experiences, but in a plant-based suit without compromising the quality. Well, since the ambition with Shushu is to present and showcase the absolute best possible versions of plant-based kitchen there is today, using with these innovative products like alternatives to meat and fish and dairy and cheese and whatsoever, and finding the absolute best ones is like key and essential to what we're doing. So we're always looking to find the best new products that are cutting edge in their fields, like Hooked, for example, with the fish alternatives here in Sweden, which have this amazing plant-based, soy-based tuna alternative. We're also working with Stockel, which is a really interesting high-tech company that tries to ferment bean proteins and make cheese protein or cheese-similar proteins from that in order to make amazing cheeses. And we also have a product that I'm really stoked about. That's not actually like an innovation, but it's an innovative way of using leftover products that's called Cashew Meatly, which is a company that takes the cashew apple, the actual apple, the fruit that the cashew nut grows underneath, and that is usually just discarded. And for every nut, there is one apple. So there's a lot of cashew apples. But they found a way to dry it at the farmers in Africa or in Asia, and then just package it to give it an amazing shelf life. And it's a fantastic alternative to meat. And we use it here in one of our game stews. And I really like when we find those products that isn't just one-sided. And that's what you also get with this new, more high-tech, more we go back to the roots kind of innovation. When you look at the proteins, when you look at the carbs and how they work with each other, then you get these really complex products. And it's so much more fun for me as a chef to work with these new products that give you the sensations that you're used to of maybe the flavor of fish. But the texture is really complex. So you can do a lot of different things with it. And that's what I think a lot of chefs should really embrace much more, to see these not just as lesser versions of natural products, but actually as amazing innovations that help you cook amazing plant-based food that's better for the climate, but still can give you the full experience of the cultures that we all love and have grown up in. Really drives people and their love for food. It's not the actual meat, it's the experience the meat gives you. It's the way you can cook it into these classic traditional dishes that's really essential for the experience. And that's what people crave. That's what people miss. And if we say, well, we should only do new stuff when we go into more plant-based, then you miss the whole part of food culture being such an integral part of our society and our identities. You actually say that in order to eat more sustainable, we can't eat classic Italian, French, Swedish, British food. And that's really sad because all of those kitchens are amazing. I grew up with classic Swedish food and I love it. And my idea with this restaurant is to showcase that with these new high-tech innovations, that these products like Hook, like Stockel, Cashew Meatly, and Oatly, and all those other products, with them, you can create this place where you don't have to choose. You can eat the cookie and have it too. I'd say it's one of my main goals with what I'm trying to do with Jammet Box, as well as with Shushu. I hope that Shushu will be able to be a platform for it in the future in order for us to collaborate more and create an academy thinking where we can share ideas. Is that how you use these new products? It's often new. It's not in the exact same way. If you have an alternative to dairy, for example, often these different alternatives from different producers work very differently. It's not like one fix and everything works the same. So it's really important to educate new chefs and also existing chefs that are like open to this whole new idea of how should we use this product, in both how these products are used, in how the new techniques like working with aquafaba or something like that, for example, but also like in the mindset. you need a certain mindset in order to be open for these new products. And to me, it's been really important to try to educate my fellow chefs as much as possible. So I'm actually working with something called Eat Green Academy, which is a new company that I started with Pelle Bergqvist, who is a publisher here in Sweden. Tried to make sustainable cooking courses really cheap and really available to chefs, both in the public sector and in the private sector. And we're doing that by creating online courses, which can be readily and easily copied and distributed. So you can actually make this know-how of how to use these new products, how to use these new models or methods, and what kind of mindset you actually need to have. Because if you have this mindset that plant-based food is new food, plant-based food is strange food, it's something else, and it's something different from normal food, that's a totally wrong mindset. You need to see like the whole idea with it. It's you just have new products in order to create all the amazing food that people already love. And that mindset is so important to share. Base of the menu is founded in European food. We have a lot of Italian, Swedish, French, classical dishes. We have a bœuf bourguignon on our buffet, for example. We have a Swedish meatball plate that's from our à la carte menu. And we're working also, like you just understood, with both a buffet and an à la carte menu, just because we want partly everybody to be able to enjoy as many flavors as possible. So we have a warm and a cold buffet that we're serving all day, with the emphasis on lunch, of course. But with the Caesar salad, we have an amazing French lentil salad with the smoked berta, which is a Swedish yellow pea tempeh, which is amazing. And we have both skagenröra, we call it in Swedish. It's actually a bit hard because in English, there's no word for the amazing thing we call röra. And then on our à la carte menu, we have pizzas. We have this amazing cashew-based mozzarella from Italy. Where else would you find amazing Italian or amazing cheese rather than in Italy? Because that's really part of what we're trying to do here. Showcase the best parts of the food that people really love. And I say Sweden is a great place for this to manifest, because we're both quite open to new food cultures, and we have this really strong root in our own traditional classic kitchen with meatballs and that kind of thing, game stews and so on. But we're also very open to Italian, French, and Asian foods in large. So that's what we're trying to showcase here, and take the best products and make it as good as possible. This first restaurant we're open here in Stockholm it's quite big. We have over 900 square meters and up to 300 places. So this is like a showpiece for what's possible. But our plan and goal is to start more smaller versions of this restaurant, supported by central kitchens, which can help us to create our stews and our röror and stuff in a much easier way. And to spread the message over Sweden first, but then hopefully also to the rest of the Nordic and several other countries as well. Because I'm really sure that we might be a couple of years ahead of some countries here in Sweden in our acceptance for plant-based food. And that acceptance has helped us to start to cook all these traditional classic dishes without having the idea of it have to be in one or another way. We can do it in the best possible way because we allow ourselves to. But I'm sure that message and that idea will resonate very well with French people or Italian people that just want to eat classic traditional French and Italian best possible sustainable way without compromising. So I'm really hoping that this is going to spread and be something big. And in that also that we can be an example to other chefs, because of course we're just going to have, even if we're going to have a lot of restaurants, hopefully, we won't be able to cater to the whole world. But I'd really love to be an example to other chefs that it's possible to cook the thing that you cook today, things that your customers love you for, with new products, and still retain the full experience of this amazing food that you're so good at serving. And that's what these products actually make possible. Us not having to choose between like eating the cake and having to. We can, and I'm really sure that that's the way forward, as well as with the Tesla. they realize that it's not actually driving that's the problem. It's the exhausts that's the problem. So let's give people the best possible driving experience, but better. And that's what we're trying to do.
So that was insight straight from the restaurant of Gustav Johansson, Sweden's best vegan chef, showcasing, you know, what you can do with plant-based stuff. Gustav, I have to ask you, I mean, Sweden traditionally is a meat-focused country. How
Absolutely.
hard was it to start to replicate meat recipes with ingredients that are vegan?
Well, I'd say not that hard, really, because it takes several different elements to be able to do it. One of them being like having the actual products or the resources that you need in order to like mimic them good enough for it actually being kind of a meatball plate. And as the years have passed, the products available, at least in Sweden, have become way much better. So that's really something that really helps. Like we have this shapeable mince, for example, that really it really helps with both the actual cooking of it and the flavors of it and the looks of it, as well with the oat cream, for example, which has really been like a keystone to being able to make these dishes really possible to make. But the other part that's really interesting and really important is that you need to have the mindset that it's okay to try. Because I think that a lot of chefs have this mindset that these classic dishes are supposed to be made with meat. And if you don't do them with meat, then they're not good enough, or there's something like essential that you can't get. And that's just not true, really. So one of the major things was just trying to do them. Because even if you do them with the black beans and oatmeal instead of mince, then it's, as long as you like spice them just right and use just the right amount of soy sauce for the umami, for example, so you actually get kind of the experience that you're looking for. And it's possible to do something quite similar, but it's the mindset, I'd say, is the most important, that you allow yourself to try.
So would you perhaps even say that some chefs are lazy or hide behind tradition in order not to have to learn new things?
Well, kinda, but I wouldn't say that it's a question of them being lazy as much as them being very firmly like set in the meat norm, which is really like what it's all about. The idea that meat is normal and normal food contains meat. But that's something that we really don't reflect that much around in ordinary like life. But the problem with that mindset is that if ordinary food contains meat and meat is a part of ordinary food, then food without meat becomes unordinary. It becomes like weird. So really what you say is that if you take away the meat from food, then you get weird food, and no one wants to cook weird food, and everybody wants to cook normal food. So that's kind of where you get stuck. You get stuck in this mindset that it is the meat that makes normal food possible. And that's the problem. So you really need to like shift focus from the meat being the essential part to the actual experience of the final product being the essential part. And that you can actually get without the meat nowadays.
No, I think that's extraordinary, because if you also look at it, we cannot eat meat anymore to the same extent.
Not in the same way. No, exactly.
No, not absolutely. And that means also that normal food, if you like, is doomed if we don't develop it.
And that sucks, really, because I'm very much
love normal food, right?
Yeah, exactly. Who doesn't? It's like, take an Italian chef, for example. Would you say that the only way to eat sustainable Italian food is to stop eating mozzarella, parmesan, prosciutto, and like every other tasty thing that's ever come out of Italy?
No, he would kill you. No,
he would kill you.
He would never.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that's the same thing really with classic Swedish traditional food, which is very dairy and meat focused. But the idea is that with a lot of like classic traditional vegan foods, and the most like visible examples of them, they've really come out of like the LA scene and the Californian like yoga scene. So you get stuck with a lot of like almonds and avocados and tacos and acai bowls and stuff. But that is just like one cultural aspect of plant-based foods. And we need to remember that that's just one side of it. But if we like take the meat norm, put it aside, and try to think that the idea that any kind of cultural cuisine could be made more plant-based, and then see what happens. If you take classic Swedish traditional food, see, could we make this plant-based? Could we work with these products? Then you get several very interesting products. And you also get companies saying that, here's a market for, it's not, I can say there's not a coincidence that Oatly comes from Sweden because we eat a lot of dairy. And there's not a coincidence that you get the best vegan cheeses from Italy and France because they eat a lot of cheese. And it's not a coincidence that we've got amazing like mince product replacements because we eat a lot of minced meat here. So you create a new market for these products to help you create your cultural version of the more sustainable food. And I really love that.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think what you said here is interesting because what we're here from Sweden, perhaps not exporting as much. Well, you can talk about exporting the products, but even faster would be exporting the mindset that you're talking about. Because if chefs get together around the new opportunity, start reinventing the traditional classical dishes with the help of vegan foods instead of creating new ones, then perhaps we can get more people faster on board for this change that we so desperately need. Exactly. I mean, like, so when you expand your network of chefs, I mean, like, why don't we invite a bunch of chefs to come to Sweden and cook traditional dishes from all around the world together with you? Please. And develop them?
I would love that. I would love that.
Let's do
that. Yeah, let's do that. Because you're all very welcome to Shushu and Sweden. Because because that's the main, like, I couldn't have said it better. That's the main thing we need to tell people, that you should just try to do what you're doing the best, what your customers love. Just do that, but with these new products and with this new amazing mindset of, it's not the experience that's bad for the climate, it's the products. So let's give them the experience with better products.
It's the experience, it's not the product. Okay, super cool, Gustav. Thank you so much for coming here and sharing. And actually, we'll take you up on the challenge. We will bring a bunch of international chefs to Sweden for the Big Meet, our yearly food tech conference, June 1 to 3. And then we will do this. Gustav, you're up for it, right? Let's do it. Okay, thanks a million for coming, Gustav. And I look forward to seeing you again. Thank you.
Rock on, man. Bye.
So thank you all out there who've been watching this live broadcast from the Swedish Pavilion at Expo 2020. And we've been discussing the future of food and culture and veganism together with Gustav Johansson, one of our leading chefs. And now we'll take a short break and be back shortly again. See you in 5 minutes. See you in 10 minutes, actually. See you in 15 minutes, says my helper here. Yeah, she sees that I'm desperate for a longer break, obviously. Okay, see you again. Okej, kör vi då eller? Okay, hi everyone and welcome back to the studio that Sweden Food Tech has set up here at the Swedish Pavilion at Expo 2020 in Dubai in order to talk about the next gen food system and all the changes that we need to make in order for it to become as healthy and sustainable as we all know it can be and must be. So today we have a bunch of super interesting entrepreneurs with us in order to talk about their experiences. And one of my favorite ones is Dan Walker. I don't know if you're in Zambia or if you're in Stockholm right now, Dan, but I hope that you're with me and you can hear me loud and clear because we're going to talk about your journey from being a venture capitalist to a fish farmer. Dan, are you here?
Yes, I'm here. I hear you very poorly. Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you. Perfect, Dan. Perfect. I don't see you, but I don't know if you see me. But the most important part is that we have you here with your voice because we're going to, yes, there you are, Dan. I see you on the mega screen that we have here in Dubai. It's super good to see you. You look healthy and tan, so presumably you've just been to Zambia if you're not still around. Good, Dan. I've basically haunted you down for this session because I think your life journey has been so interesting going from the venture capital vanguard to the fish farm in Zambia. But I'm not the one who's supposed to tell your story. You're the one. So tell me, who are you?
Well, I'm just the normal Swedish guy getting bored of normal work and wanted to do something different. And through my experiences in Africa since the mid-80s, I got some opportunities and I decided to leave the business life in Stockholm and start something different, which was more, sort of say, in the trend of creating food in a sustainable way and food which we can eat without getting sick in the long term.
I think that's a very, very short version of it, but let's start there.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the whole thing started with I have a near friend in Victoria Falls in Zimbabwe, and we discussed of starting a farm, and a farm came up for sale outside Livingstone in Zambia, and we bought it. It had 2 kilometers of river frontage on the Zambezi River. So that was the main purpose of buying it. And we actually discussed for a couple of years of what to do in the farm. The Zambezi is on about 1,200 meters of elevation. So there's frost in the winter and nighttime, which exclude us from growing wheat or soy or something. But fish farming, we were advised to start fish farming, which we then actually started to develop in 2014. And we started out with 21 hectare earthen ponds, drawing water from the Zambezi. And everything was nice and dandy. And the farm was actually looking to become quite profitable until the currency depreciated with 500% against the dollar. And when you invest in dollars and you get paid of the products in local currency, that hurts quite bad. So, which was originally thought to be like a sort of a venture I could do as a pension job. I was forced to invest a lot more and expand into a positive cash flow again, which we did. So we now have 51 hectare ponds and we have a production capacity of 1,200 metric tons of tilapia. Now,
and tilapia is a very, very sustainable fish, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It's a bream, so it eats algae, and in the wild it eats algae and vegetables and stuff like that. And there are different ways of feeding the tilapia. You need to get an algae growth in the ponds. Most people, they have a small pigsty next to each pond, and they flush down the leftovers from the pigs into the ponds, and then the algae grow. That limits your future possibilities to export to, for instance, the Middle East. So we, on an early stage, decided to fertilize our pond with farming fertilizer. That was not as easy as said. It's an extreme balance to keep the whole algae population alive and at a healthy state. It's very easy to kill them or whatever, it's anyway. And apart from algae, the fish, we give them soy-based protein in different percentages of protein depending on how quick we want them to grow. There's also a price tag comes with increased percentage of protein. And so it's like a big equation when it comes to the feed side of the fish. So you have fish which is eating vegetables, basically. So there's no fish feed involved at all. There's no other fish killed to feed the tilapia. And that is not the case in other species in the aquaculture industry. So my belief was that if you have a sustainable species in tilapia, that'll become the future. I'm afraid I might be a bit early, because if you look at the market in Sweden, tilapia has not really become accepted yet. It's not a known product. It's hidden in fish and chips and stuff like that, which you can buy in the shop. But people don't buy like tilapia fillet and prepare it themselves as is. But hopefully we'll get there. Yeah.
Well, we're getting there. I was actually in a store today here in Dubai and was picking up one of their weekly leaflets, and big advertisements for tilapia, which is about a fifth of the price of salmon fillet here. So definitely it is something that is bringing to the market here.
Well, if you can find some customers to us who want to buy ecologically grown fillets of tilapia from us in Dubai or anywhere in the Middle East, I'll be all ears.
Okay, wonderful. So anyone here in the,
I must tell you, I'm a bit short of time, but
Sure.
I must say, and the other half of this venture, which is quite interesting, it turns out that the village next to us with 4,000 people, our 120 employees come from that village. And after 6 years of the cash flow from salaries, you can see that the mud huts with grass roofs, they are thatched roofs. They are being turned into brick houses with tin roofs. Our neighboring lodge, Waterbury Lodge, which is a beautiful place, they've built a primary school. We've helped out with our heavy machines a little bit, and we are building at the moment, we're constructing a nursery station. And the whole idea is to see that, if we give the village electricity, healthcare, and education, maybe something will happen in the future. That's our belief. And in the village, a small grocery store has popped up. There are 2 hairdressers. There's a small shop where you can actually charge your cell phone. So it's interesting to see how in the countryside, in the poorest part of Zambia, how people are starting to get a sustainable life just because we are there providing a job. And I'm trying to convince donors and help organizations of that this is the right way of helping people. But it seems that people are really, they have their systems of how they work and how they distribute their money. And that is not through us, at least. I can understand that.
No, but that's what's so interesting with the stuff that you're doing there, actually in Zambia, is that you're proving to the world that there is another and better functioning, not just food system, because it's for surely is a better food system, but also societal system. Now, I must ask you one last question, because I know you need to run, but so you're from the financial sector, and there are 2 things I've noted in the world of food and food tech is that one is like a lot of women, and the second one is a lot of guys who quit the financial sector in order to do something within food. What is it you think that lures people to go from finance to food?
I can speak for myself. I mean, in the world of finance, one of the main driving forces is greed, and if you live with greed and you don't have the right mental configuration for that, you actually don't feel very well. That was my case, and you see greed, how it affects people. Decisions are made on earning money, not on doing something. It's not of the interest of building a company and producing something the market needs. It's completely driven by the interest of increasing personal wealth. And of course, we all want to earn money, but I mean, still, you only need one car, and you might want to travel and do some stuff and have a freedom of not being dependent. I understand that, but it's in the finance world, it comes to an excess. If you look at modern day venture capital companies, I mean, the money they're earning is like grotesque in my world. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. So seeing that greed is not the only thing in life that's driving people away from finance and into food, I think that's a very, very good tendency. And thank you so much, Dan, for coming here and sharing with us. I look forward to following your journey and following the journey of not just you, but also the village very close to you in Zambia. Thanks again for joining us today.
Thank you, Johan, and sell some fish, please. Okay.
We'll do that.
Cheers.
Okay. Cheers. Bye for now then.
Bye.
Okay, so now we have a short break for 5 minutes before we head into the next session here at the Big Meet online session, straight from the Swedish Pavilion at Expo 2020 in Dubai. See you in 5 minutes. Så. Då så.
Let's go.
That's very good to see. Young man, you're right now live on YouTube. So we're being broadcasted live. And I'm sorry, guys, I have to take the stage back from you because we're doing another broadcasting here straight from the Swedish Pavilion at Expo 2020 in Dubai. We will have a break soon again, and then you're welcome to come back and dance here again, both for YouTube and also for the audience here. So as you can see, CJ, I'm sure you're seeing this right now. She's almost there, or yes, we're good. CJ, do we still have you around? If so, Jennifer, can you throw CJ up on stage here? So this is really interesting. So we're broadcasting live here from the Sweden Food Tech stage, or not the stage, it's the Sweden Pavilion co-creation stage here at Expo 2020, from where Sweden Food Tech currently is broadcasting. And we have brought to you an illustrious motley crew of guys and girls from all around the world. And here we have CJ Jones with us. CJ, one of my favorite entrepreneurs on the planet, is actually live with us. I know you've had some amazing or tremendous problems with tech, CJ, but I'm glad to see you, and I hope you hear me as well. Okay, wonderful, wonderful.
I can.
You can. Oh, that's very good. No, I think it's always really interesting. So to the audience knowledge here at the stage, we're bringing to you through Zoom calls with entrepreneurs from all around the world that help us in Sweden redefine the food system. And we're doing it together with the knowledge of the world, because we really need to change the food system. And one of the great inspirational sources that we have, or I have in my journey, is the stuff that CJ has been doing in Kenya. So we brought CJ along to tell us a bit more about what she has been up to, actually together with a Swedish company by the name of Tetra Pak. And if you don't know what Tetra Pak is, take a close look at the milk box or the juice box the next time you drink from one of those. Chances are they're being produced in a Tetra Pak machine, a huge Tetra Pak machine. But that's not the stuff that you're dealing with, right, CJ? Tell us more about you and your journey.
Well, thank you very much for that wonderful introduction. And yeah, sorry about the technology fail, but it is what it is. Yeah, I mean, I guess, can I take a couple of steps back and just sort of have a little talk about these issues of why we went searching for innovative solutions for the big problems that we're facing right now. So I've always thought that we have to disrupt a little around the edges. And so that the solutions that we need to find can't be small because the problems are so huge. So we went searching for a solution to the issues of food waste that were being generated from the horticultural sector here in Kenya and in any other country that's exporting to Europe. Kenya is a special case because we export nearly 25% of Europe's fresh vegetables from Kenya. So we have a very special thing happening here. And there's no doubt that a lot of the solutions now for the solutions to fix our broken food system are coming from technologies outside food itself. For millennia, we've been producing food. We know we can do that. We're great at it. We've produced great food all over the world. And yet we don't take enough attention to things like distribution systems, packaging systems, innovative technology, food preservation, all those other things that kind of sit around. I would say that almost nobody there in your audience is thinking about how their food is packed and the kind of effort that's gone into that packaging. So we really needed to solve a big problem here in Kenya. We produce 22,000 metric tons of cosmetic waste every year. And we stumbled into Tetra Pak and one of their newer technologies called Recard. So it was a marriage made in heaven, because it gave us a solution to be able to repurpose an extremely perplexing wasted resource, really, and to turn it into what is essentially an amazing low-cost food product. Packaged food, 2-year ambient shelf life. And that's thanks to the packet and Tetra Pak's amazing investment in packaging technology. That's what is get that box right. So these marriages are meant to happen somewhere along the line, and you know that as well as I do.
Okay, so basically, I think what's interesting here is that you take food waste, and I'm like, food waste is a huge, major challenge all around the world, not the least because we're stressing the soils of planet Earth by overproducing something like 30%, and just throwing it away, and it's kind of ridiculous. It's like, yeah, you tax people 30% too much, and then you have to burn up the money. People wouldn't really. They would really like that if that was to happen. But still, it's what we're doing to planet Earth. And so food waste is a major, major thing here. And what we're trying to attack, at least in Sweden, is to see, okay, how can we use this food waste? Can we sell ugly vegetables to people? Can we make sure that people really use all the stuff that's in their fridge? But you've taken the other perspective and say, okay, no, we need to preserve the stuff before it goes to waste. Perhaps even before it gets ugly, right? And I think that means you have a structural solution.
Yeah, we do. And I think that, I think one of the things we have to do, Johan, is really like pull apart why people consider food to be waste in the first place. If you look up all the dictionary definitions of what waste is, it's, the big one is discarded after primary use, or defective, or unwanted, unusable, a threat, or that we fail to employ it usefully. These are really interesting ways that, in a way, inform how we think about waste. But in fact, a lot of what we are classing as waste is not. It's just that we have this built-in perception or need drivers for perfection. And so we do tend to waste a lot of food, which is not necessarily even in that category. So what we're doing is really taking, it's a specification variation in food that's for export. Now, it's really easy to throw stones at the export industry and say, this is ridiculous. You should be using all these vegetables. But we have to sit ourselves down and give ourselves a really firm talk here, because the truth is, some of the specifications are about transport costs and packaging costs, all of which, of course, eats into our ecosystem as well and creates more waste in another place. So sometimes, let's just take French beans. If they're too long or a bit crinkly, they don't sit nicely in a pallet. Now, if 100 tons of these a day, they've all got to sit neatly. And so we end up rejecting these ones that are not in specification. Now, the amount of waste, the amount of rejected product created in this way is a mountain, and we need to deal with mountains. We don't need to work around the sides. And the other thing I really want people to start challenging themselves about is the extremely important link to food and dignity. In Africa, they don't want wonky or ugly vegetables. They just like to have vegetables, actually. And so when we think that it's okay to eat ugly or wonky, they don't. They want good. They want tasty. They want fresh. And we have a responsibility, all of us, all of Africa has a responsibility to deliver fresh, great tasting products at affordable price points. And that's the big monster that we attacked when we brought this solution to the table. So
yes, yeah. So sorry, go ahead. I mean, like you cook the stuff, right? So into delicious, nutritious meals and preserve it.
Meal in a box, basically. Yeah.
Meal in a box, and then you sell that, and then of course I think this is super cool because instead of moving people to the farms, you can essentially move all the goodness of the farm into people in the cities in a meal in a box. Tell me, how much does a meal cost when you sell it in Kenya?
Because we have a valorization model, 500 grams, maybe between 150 and 200 shillings, so about $1.70. What's that? Euro 50?
Euro 50 for a
That's
complete meal.
Yeah.
Well, that's amazing.
And,
so
yeah, it is. And nutrient dense, because with the Tetra Pak technology, we close the top and when the vegetables are raw. So as far as possible, the nutrients are trapped in the food. Of course, we have problems with the water-soluble vitamins and things, but that's also lost in home cooking. There are some things you can't solve. Technology hasn't given us a way yet. Maybe we will. I think we will one day, but right now we can't. So I think that these sorts of solutions add a level of dignity to food, which is really important. And we have to remember that a lot of African consumers do not have refrigerators. So to be able to produce ambient temperature, shelf-stable food is critical to the success of fixing our food chain here. Critical.
That's amazing.
And Tetra Pak gives us that.
Yeah, and this is something that needs to scale and scale and scale and scale, of course. So CJ, and I would love to speak more or talk more to you about this, but unfortunately we have run out of time due to the technical glitches that we had. That's the way it is, right? But on the other hand, we can get back to this topic and talk about it again and again and again because we need to and must. Thank you again, CJ, for taking of your time and sharing your knowledge here with us at the Expo 2020 in Dubai. See you soon again.
I hope so. I hope so. It's been great. And to everybody out there, I really apologize for the technology. Sorry. And thank you for inviting me. Lovely to see you guys.
See you soon. Lovely. Now,
bye.
Okay, bye, CJ. Now, this is this is one of my favorite projects in the world, actually, where someone takes the food system, redefines it, and does that not just to make a stupendous amount of money, but actually to change something for the betterment of the people and the planet. So, and let's get into some heavy tech now that does roughly the same, but for health. So I turn now to the huge, I mean, like this stage here is fantastic and the screen is huge. And I think we have Ilan Samish now, Jennifer, coming up. So we will switch out CJ's wonderful picture if technology provides us with the solution here. And yes, here we have our Ilan Samish from Amai. Ilan, it's such a pleasure to have you join us here at the stage of the center stage of the Swedish Pavilion at Expo 2020 in Dubai, in order to talk about, sorry about that, something that is so sweet you can't believe it. And that, of course, is a segue to you, Ilan. What is it that you're doing?
Thank you. We are doing designer proteins for the mass food market. The first product that we are launching in less than 1 year is a hyper sweet designer protein, the first protein, the first sweetener on which you can add adjectives such as healthy, tasty, delicious, just like sugar, fit for the market, sustainable, and even cheaper than sugar.
Well, no. So when I went to school, I was taught that sugars, that's a carbohydrate. And now you talk about proteins. Please tell me, did I get it wrong or have you invented something?
No, actually, we didn't invent anything. We just look at nature. If we look, and now I'm talking as a biochemist, and what is really sugar? Sugar is just a few carbons in which you have a few hydroxyls. Amino acids actually are carbons in which you have hydroxyls. So you have over 200 proteins which do have a sweet taste. Even lysozyme, the protein which is in our tears, is sweet. While there is a lot of salt, so we know tears are salty, there is also a sweet protein there. But in the depth of the jungle, from Malaysia and China to West Africa, you have hypersweet proteins, because there, the sugary apple, which was good enough in the Garden of Eden, is no longer good enough. In the depth of the jungle, the survival fear of plants is that the shade will turn into complete darkness, and then they won't be able to do photosynthesis. So they need to attract animals that come from afar to enjoy their fruit, and for that they need to be better than sugar. They also wear some lipstick, all red fruits, and they are, on one hand, activating the sweet receptor in our oral cavity, just like sugar or any other sweetener. But on the other hand, just like any other protein, they are fully digested to amino acids once they enter the gastrointestinal tract. And consequently, unlike all other sweeteners, they don't have adverse interactions with the microbiome, liver, and kidneys. And consequently, they are very good. In our case, we made the world's sweetest and most stable sweetener, protein sweetener, because the ones in nature in 40-something degrees, a weather that is not unfamiliar to Dubai, they simply denature, just like boiling an egg, and then they lose their sweetness. Our sweetener, you can boil it for a short time, you can pasteurize it in any scheme you want, and it will remain sweet. And it is so sweet that we replace a teaspoon of sugar with a milligram of our protein, or a kilogram of our protein replaces 4 tons of sugar, and consequently we can make it cheaper than sugar in sweetness units.
Well, that, so something that is as sweet as sugar is cheaper and doesn't make you grow like I have because I've eaten too much of it. That sounds too good to be true. Are there no hidden negatives here?
Oh, so we are 4,000 times sweeter than sugar. The potency is very high, and that's why we can make it so cheap in sweetness units. And actually today, sugar is the world's new tobacco. The sugar conflict is the fact we all love sugar. It activates in our brain very good feelings, just like other things like tobacco, like sex, like addictive things. And on the other hand, while we love it, we know that it is toxic for us. Actually, just in the last 5-6 years, we understand that this is public enemy number one, the biggest challenge, which is a non-communicable disease. We know communicable diseases, which are delivered by pathogens like COVID-19, like others, are not good for us. But from the non-communicable diseases, sugar is considered public enemy number one. And I know it from a young age. My twin sister always ate less than me, weighed more. She has a sweet tooth, also a different metabolism, despite us being twins. And I could only eat ice cream after the doctor, and I couldn't tell my sister I did it. And I got obsessed with sweeteners. So after publishing what became the main book in the field of computational protein design, I decided to leave my academic career and design something that will help solve the sugar paradox.
I think that is absolutely, super interesting to hear. So nature sat on the solution all the time, but we refused to look for it where it was, right? So it took a deep scientist such as yourself to take us away from sugar. And to be honest, if you look at sugar over history, sugar hasn't just been bad for us as individuals, it has been bad for societies too. So leaving bad old sugar behind would of course be an amazing thing to do. But I mean,
just one point, if I can say, what is found in nature is a hypersweet protein. It is less sweet than what we did. But the point is that most proteins live in their own small piece of heaven, whether it is our body or whether it is in the depth of the jungle. However, the mass food market for a protein is a hell of an environment. And as a hell of an environment, we need to adjust the protein to live in it. So for that, all we need to do is to learn again from nature. And we know that there is life in hell. There is life in the Dead Sea, in hot springs, deep in the ocean, in acidic swamps. In all of these places, there is life, and where there is life, there are proteins. These proteins are called extremophiles. So using computational protein design, we design novel proteins, which are extremophiles, which can withstand very acidic conditions. We have a collaboration with Ocean Spray, and cranberry juice is very acidic. We have collaboration with other multinationals, Danone, PepsiCo, and Mars Wrigley, and others. And we need to adjust to long shelf life, to being in a concentration, not in a buffer, in conditions which are not the typical conditions that are found in fruits in the depth of the jungle. And that's what we did, coupling the functionalities in nature to extreme condition proteins, which are again in nature, putting it together to make novel proteins, and then to produce them using sustainable precision fermentation. Fermentation is the oldest technology in the book of food technology, whether it is wine, kimchi, yogurt, beer, all things where we eat or drink all the content of a fermenter. In our case, we add a layer of harvesting, and we take out of the fermenter the protein, which consequently is defined by the FDA and by the European Food Safety Authority as GMO-free. And at the end of the day, we have a pure white powder, and our business is to sell white powder that makes people happy.
I think it's wonderful. And I think there are things to be said for this, not just on the health side or the taste side, but the fact is, and of course you know this, but to the audience out there, let's think about it. The two largest crops on the planet, that's sugar and maize, or corn if you're an American. Corn is used mainly to produce another type of sugar. So I mean, like, the two things that we grow the most on the planet today is sugar. If you replace those two mega industries, the thing is that we will have a lot of new farmland to farm new things on. So if people think we have a crisis when it comes to farmland, I think we just have to skip the sugary part, replace those with proteins, and use the land for something better. Am I right?
You're absolutely right. Actually, for every 1% of sugar that we remove from our planet, we save on one hand 1.7 million metric tons of sugar. On the other hand, we save 2.5 trillion liters of water, 6.5 million acres of arable land, and $10 billion of healthcare dollars. So we have a detailed quantitative impact plan, which goes in two tracks. One track, SDG 3.2.14, is the health track. Another track is the sustainability track. As sugar, and the WF has a detailed report on that, sugar is one of the least environmentally friendly crops, as you use on one hand pesticides and herbicides, on the other hand you have a carbon footprint. You need to transport 200 million tons of sugar, and you have deforestation. It affects the lower socioeconomic class the most. So we really have a detailed quantitative impact plan, and we want to do good for our planet. It's not just a white powder like other white powders which make us happy, which not always do good for us.
No, that's absolutely true. So tell me, when will I be able to go out there and lay my hands on some of your amazing protein and use it for myself? Or is that still 10 years away, or is it something that's happening tomorrow?
We are actually now scaling up. We have already requests for tons of the protein. In less than 1 year, we will begin sales in the United States. After the United States, we have Southeast Asia, South America, Europe. We are going globally. We have 3 patent applications in the PCT and in the national phase. The national phase was submitted in 52 different countries, what most startups don't do, because we're really going globally. So we actually are defined by the regulatory route. We already had the official talks with the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, and we got from them a memo. We are now doing the scale-ups, the reproduction batches, so we can begin sales in less than 1 year. And it all depends by country according to the regulatory track. And we will slowly meet the demand for huge amounts of sugar replacement.
Okay, wonderful. I so much look forward to seeing the old sugar industry die, but without relieving me of my dear treats, the candy or the other sweet desserts that I crave so much. Thank you so much for coming here.
You hit on 2 points. You hit on 2 points. One point is we are focused on delivering the delicious taste of sugar. For that, we are not eliminating sugar totally. We reduce between 40 and 70 up to 80% sugar from the foods and beverages. In ketchup, we have 70% less added sugar. You won't feel the difference. In peanut butter, in beverages, in dairy applications, 50% is common for us to do. And the other side is that, unfortunately, sugar is not only a sweetener, but also a cheap bulking agent. And for that, we are still not there. We do need the help of other bulking agents. So, for example, milk chocolate, which is 50% less sugar, for that, we will need a bulking agent, and then it won't be cheaper than regular milk chocolate.
Okay, you have to go out into the forest again, bring some new funky proteins back to the lab and scale those so we can get rid of it all together. Thank you so much for coming and sharing this. This feels like the beginning of a true revolution. See you soon again, I hope, and the best of luck.
Thank you.
So that was amazing to see that we could end not just perhaps tobacco, but to end sugar in my lifetime. That's possible. That's beyond comprehension. Now we take a short break before getting back to an amazing entrepreneur that you might have heard of already before, Josh Tetrick of Eat Just. We see you in 10 minutes. Thank you, guys. Nu ska jag ta en kopp kaffe.
Good job.
That's very good to see you on stage, guys. You're welcome back soon again. After this little session that we have here in the Sweden Food Tech studio at the Swedish Pavilion, this magnificent Swedish Pavilion at the Expo 2020 in Dubai. And we're here to broadcast you some of the major entrepreneurs and innovators of the world when it comes to not the current food system, but the next gen food system. And with us here today, I'm so proud of this, is one of my personal heroes and idols, Josh Tetrick of Eat Just. Josh is one of those trailblazers who have been constantly innovating in the world of new food. So Josh, I have a hard time introducing you, as I guess you would have to do that yourself by telling us more about your story and the stuff you have brought to the world so far. So Josh, can we get you on stage here? I think we're just about to pin your picture onto this massive stage that we have in the pavilion here. It's I don't know what the size is in this screen in feet, but I think it's like 5 meter times 10 or something like that. So we have huge, massive faces showing up here so that the audience can truly see you. Now, so, oh yes, here we have Josh. So good to see you, man.
Hi, good to see you, my friend. How you been?
I'm fine, and you're looking good and healthy. Good to see. You're doing well.
I'm trying. I'm doing well.
And you're doing well, not only for you, but for the world, because some of you out there might not know who Josh Tetrick is. So please tell us, who are you?
I'm Josh. I co-founded a company called Eat Just that's focused on making meat and eggs in a better way. And what we mean by a better way is a way that doesn't require slaughtering billions of animals, doesn't require using many billions of gallons of water, doesn't require using 1/3 of the earth to plant soy and corn to feed the animals we eat, and is ultimately helping us on a personal level to be healthier. We have a product called Just Egg, that's the first egg from a plant, and a product called Good Meat, that's the first ever real meat. It's called cultivated meat, real meat that didn't require the slaughter of an animal. We launched that in Singapore, and our company has about 243 team members based in San Francisco, and I'm ready to keep this thing going.
No, I think this is amazing, because the first time I heard about the egg project, I was blown away, because what you basically did was go out there, understand nature, learn from what nature does, and then find proteins that could replace the proteins in eggs. Was that from was it Canadian yellow pea? I tend to remember. Was that correct?
So the way to think about it for your audience is there are 2 trillion eggs that are laid every year, 2 trillion. And those 2 trillion eggs are laid by many, many billions of chickens. And those many, many billions of chickens are eating lots of soy and corn all day, every single day. And we need more and more and more land, more animals, more and more. Never ends the quantities that we need. We said, is there a better way to make an egg? And what if you can make an egg from a plant as opposed to from a bird? And we found a bean called the mung bean. It's been around for over 4,500 years. It's this little green bean, and it turns out there's a protein in this bean that scrambles like an egg. And then we built a technology around it, and then eventually launched the product, became the fastest growing egg brand in North America. And ultimately the goal is to be lower cost, healthier, tastier than anything that could come out of a chicken.
I think that's amazing, but because you started out with a mayonnaise that wasn't allowed to be called a mayonnaise. I always found that battle with the big mayo companies really interesting, and then came, the scrambled egg, substitute, amazing. And then you went for the big one, which is of course to grow meat, outside the bodies of dead animals. And I think that because that has been to many people pure science fiction. But that science fiction has actually landed on Earth right now, because you can do it.
Yeah, people for the longest time have thought of this approach to making meat, again, which is not needing billions of animals, not needing a third of the world to plant soy and corn, but instead needing a cell in a stainless steel vessel. They thought of that as, well, maybe that'll happen in the 2300s sometime. It's not relevant for today. Well, we received regulatory approval in Singapore and then went on to commercialize that in Singapore over a year ago. We've been selling in Singapore for over a year. We're working on plans to receive regulatory approval in the MENA region in North America. And ultimately, this is the way we think people will make meat. If you think about it, why do you want a planet that a third of it is used just to plant soy and corn to feed the animals we eat? Isn't there a better way to use the planet? Do we really want a planet where the way we eat accelerates zoonotic disease? Do we really want a planet where we need to inflict all this harm? If there's a better way to do it, why not do it a better way? Just like if streaming music is better than a CD, well, let's move to streaming. And if electric car is better than a gasoline powered car, stop complaining about it, move to an electric car. And ultimately, we just think this approach is better in the same way those things have been better throughout time.
I think this is really cool. And I mean, if you can start, building meat in a lab or in huge vats instead, I guess it's a bioreactor of some sort that you use for this. Of course, you free a lot of land also to grow food to feed a growing population. How much land do we use? I mean, like, of course, you're mainly going for chicken now, but eventually, is there any limit to what type of meat cells you can grow?
Well, for your audience, just imagine you're visiting from another galaxy and you're in a ship and you're looking down over this planet Earth, right? And you're trying to get a sense of how do these human beings down there use their planet? And you would find that the human beings down there, imagine, again, you're looking down, that the human beings have decided that a third of the planet is specifically dedicated to the activity of planting soy and corn to feed live animals who are slaughtered, who then end up as breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And then you're trying to figure out how that could be the case. If there's only one planet that these human beings have, yet a third of it is being used for this activity. It's pretty bizarre. We could use a third of the planet to have biodiverse rainforests. We could use a third of a planet to plant food to feed human beings, as opposed to feeding animals. I think if you look through the lens of, if we were just starting over today, if we didn't have to deal with all the habits and the mindsets and the infrastructure of the past, what would we do? And it definitely would be making meat in a new and better way. And that's why we're doing it.
Okay, so I think you're into something here that we need to dig into a bit further. What are the hindrances for you and your competitors out there to achieve a world where we can eat meat but without killing a single animal? Is it the mindset? Is it regulatory? What is it?
Well, far and away, the biggest limiting step right now is we need to build the infrastructure to make more meat. So we're selling in Singapore, but we're only selling to a handful of restaurants. And that's not because of consumers. It's not because of regulatory. It's because of us. We need to build the infrastructure, and that requires a lot of capital, and we're investing in it right now. Requires solving a number of engineering challenges, which our team is in the process of hammering away on now. So that is the biggest limiting step. Now, other things that we need to look at are regulatory. Certainly, if we don't have regulatory approval in major countries around the world, we can't solve it. But I think that'll come. And then the next one is consumers. When in our research in Singapore, in our commercialization activities in Singapore, it's been the case that if you're under the age of 30, here's how you think about this. I don't really care if my meat is made in a giant stainless steel vessel. That sounds just fine to me. If you're over the age of 30, you got some questions. Where is this vessel? What's in this vessel? How do you do the vessel? Where is this? All very fair questions, but there is an interesting split between over the age of 30 and under the age of 30. Making sure that we are able to communicate clearly with both groups, that we're unpacking the science, that people don't feel like we're hiding the ball, that people understand what it is and what it's not. It is not a live animal that we slaughter. That is true. So it is factually different. And sometimes people will say the process that we undergo is a bit strange, a little bizarre. And what I encourage them to think about is that the average chicken today, or the average cow today, doesn't look anything like the cow or the chicken of 1,000 years ago. The average chicken today has white feathers as opposed to brightly colored feathers. The average chicken today has an enormous chest, different than the chest of a jungle fowl back in the day. The average chicken today lives for 45 days. The average chicken today can't even stand up straight. So when we talk about words like natural, we should really investigate what we mean when we say the word natural, because that kind of chicken sure ain't natural. So there's a lot of consumer communication that we'll need to do, but the biggest limiting step is we just got to make more.
We get used to all these fake pictures of what food is and what's natural, right? So I totally agree with you. Like when you follow the media feed from what's happening around your restaurants, and people are eating the products in Singapore, people say, yeah, it's tasty, it's lovely, and the fact that it's not a dead animal makes it even tastier. So people actually prefer this. It's not just that they're neutral. I think they even prefer it. Am I right there?
Correct. Yeah, the majority of people say they prefer it to the conventional approach to making meat. And listen, at the heart of it, I get that human beings are not thinking about this all day, every day, like I am, right? People are busy, they're anxious, they're interested in lots of other things, right? And all things being equal, people want to make sure they have good, tasty food that makes them feel good, that they can afford. And it's up to us to make sure what we're doing meets that. And ultimately, I think we're going to be living in a world where the vast majority of meat doesn't require the slaughter of an animal. And we're going to look back at this world that we live in today and think, man, that was kind of weird that we used to do that. In the same way that we look back at how we used to consume content 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago and think, man, I don't really remember a VH cassette that you needed to record things on. Well, that was just here. So things change quick. They're not inevitable. And this is one that I think will really make for a healthier world if we can get it right. Okay,
lovely. So, it's interesting because I was at there's this big, huge, gigantic food fair called Gulf Food going on right now. It actually ended yesterday. Yep. So as they're speaking on one of the panels and regarding, what can this region do in order to become, or get to the top or be in the forefront of the food revolution. And, one of the things we discussed was actually regulatory. For me, coming from Europe, I don't see in a million years that we will make lab-grown meat available because of the strong lobby organizations we have. But in a place such as the Middle East or UAE, they could really take a step, much like Singapore, right? And allow for this or allow for some sort of a sandboxing here to test things out. Would you consider coming here with your company if you would get the right regulatory approval here?
Certainly. And I think UAE is in a position to build an entirely new industry out of making meat in a different way, in an industry that reduces reliance on imports. I think about 25% of the meat is imported into Dubai right now and Abu Dhabi right now. And that creates a vulnerability that I know policymakers in UAE are already well aware of. And it also creates maybe even a bigger opportunity to create all that economic activity around domestic production, around export, potentially to Western Europe. This technology should be looked at like the technologies around artificial intelligence, around broadband, semiconductor. These are key enabling technologies for what the world is going to look like in the centuries ahead. And the countries that decide, and it's a decision to go after it, I think are the countries that are going to end up winning. And Singapore is a good example of it.
Yeah, but if you take a look at that, because you've been banging your head against the regulators for years and years now. And do you see any tendency around, recently to treat you guys more fairly or with a huge larger interest than they've had so far?
Yeah, I mean, so far, particularly in the last couple of years, we've seen with Singapore, we've already seen 2 regulatory approvals from Singapore. Seems like China is becoming more open to this. They just integrated cultivated meat into their 5-year agricultural plan. We have a really good relationship and communication with the FDA and the USDA here in the United States. So I think things are starting to turn.
Okay, so very good then. So this means that the place such as Singapore, for instance, I spoke with one of their agencies a couple of months ago about their 30 by 30 approach, which is 2030. They want to produce 30% of their food within the borders of Singapore, and Singapore is of course a ridiculously small country with no assets whatsoever when it comes to cultivatable land. So they need to turn to you guys and similar ones. But when I spoke to them, I said, no, 30 by 30, that's defensive. We need to up the ante here and go bolder. What type of discussions are you having with people such as the Singaporeans? They want to invest big time in your factories?
Yeah, I mean, Singapore and the Economic Development Board in Singapore made a decision that they wanted to be a world leader in making meat and eggs without the slaughter of an animal, without the use of all that land, without the use of all the carbon emissions. And they have organized the central entities of their country around making it happen. So it was very intentional, whether that is preferential access to land or tax incentives. They've just shown a real enthusiasm, and then that enthusiasm manifests into concrete policy changes to make it more likely that a company like ours would want to be in Singapore. And we've seen a rush of companies actually in the alternative protein space since our approval in Singapore decide that their home should be Singapore. And I think every country, UAE has an incredible opportunity to do exactly the same thing. Very similar, obviously, in many ways to Singapore, some really unique advantages relative to Singapore. And there's nothing stopping it other than the intention to do it.
Exactly. So when you look at what's the driving forces of the next gen food system, the food system that is healthy and sustainable both for humans and the planet, that's driven by things or factors such as technology and policy making. It's not driven by factors such as land or plants or what you grow on the land. It's other things today.
Yeah, many, certainly a lot of factors, but policymakers, again, using Singapore as an example, who decide that there are national security, long-term economic activity reasons for investing in this. That's incredibly powerful. And using China as an example, China has these 5-year plans that end up arraying all the force of society around something. And they just announced that cultivated meat is key to their agricultural plan for the next 5 years. So is you're another country, whether you're whether you're in the US, whether you're Sweden, whether you're UAE, and you're looking at what's happening in Singapore, you're looking at what's happening in China, well, you have to ask yourself, do I want to compete with those countries or outcompete with them, or just buy my meat and eggs from them for the next 100 years?
I mean, this is absolutely tantalizing, because when you start looking at this, it's not just about, now we're talking about chicken, we're talking about eggs or chicken fillets or chicken breasts, but we could easily talk about other things that we're producing, coming from nature eventually, but we could produce it in other ways. Do you see really a limitation to what we could produce with the same type of technology that you're deploying today?
Certainly many fewer limitations in the conventional approach. You really have much more of an opportunity to maximize sustainability, health, lower costs, accessibility, mitigate food safety issues. So again, it's not that dissimilar from how we think about, what are the advantages that some of the newer electric cars have over a gasoline powered car? What are the examples of a digital file over an analog file? There's just much more opportunities to improve, to update, not to be hooked to the infrastructure of the past, but to build one that makes a lot more sense for the many future generations that are relying on us to solve this problem.
Yep. Okay. So, one question I get a lot is, what is the tastiest meat on the planet? And so usually we say Wagyu, but really I don't know, because I haven't tasted all the different meats that are available. But I don't think that we should go out there and kill animals in order to understand it. But we don't know yet if it's the nose of the polar bear, or if it's the panda's ear or something like that. But whatever it is, we could presumably produce that in the future.
Right. Yeah, you don't have we have a partnership with a high-end farm in Japan called Toriyama, and they make this very expensive kind of Wagyu. They call it Toriyama Wagyu, and it would be for $100+ a pound if you were to buy it. But the economics of making it through this new approach are the same as making cheap chicken through this new approach. So whether it's high-end cuts like tuna or Toriyama Wagyu or things we've never even had before, you really open up the aperture and can explore many more possibilities.
So basically, we open up the doors to innovation, gastronomy innovation, or any other type of innovation, because suddenly you essentially democratize fine dining by doing this way. So everyone can have bluefin tuna, exquisite lobster tails, or whatever in the future. God, we'll be so bored by eating delicious food eventually.
That's right. No, I agree.
No, I think you paint a very bright picture of the future of food. If there's anything, an ask you could give to the people watching this and hearing you, what would that be?
I think it'd be two things. One is in your own life, multiple times a day, you have an opportunity to use your own intention to make things a little bit better for your own personal health and the health of your planet through the food that you eat. And I would use that. And then the second thing I'd ask is for folks thinking about whether you're policymakers, whether you're a potential entrepreneur, whether you're an investor, solving this problem is one of the real urgent problems of our age. And getting in it in your own way is both a way of really fulfilling that desire we all have to do something meaningful. It is also just critically important for us today and for the many humans and animals we've never met in the many hundreds of years to come. And anything I can do to help make that happen, you can count on me and count on the team to do it.
Thank you so much, Josh. Food is the solution indeed. Thank you so much for joining us today, and the best of luck, all your endeavors.
You bet. Thanks, everyone. It's good to be with you.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
So, folks, that was Josh Tetrick. Wow. It's always such a wonderful moment when you get to talk to him and understand his vision of the future. And I think it's bright. I think we really can make a change. And as you say, it's not just about consuming his products. You can also go out there and make an impact yourself. We take a short break now, but we'll be back in 10 minutes to talk about the coolest wasabi on the planet of Earth. See you soon.
Nice.
Där satt, va?
Det där satt.
food systems. You're very welcome to come back and dance tomorrow again when we set up the camera around 3 o'clock. Actually, I don't know if you knew, but you're right now live on YouTube. Yeah. So you will become the great new dancing stars on YouTube, I'm sure. So kids, I have to ask you to leave the stage, please, because now we're going to interview one of the coolest entrepreneurs in the world. I don't know if he's coolest or coldest. That was a cool guy, by the way. So Ragnar, I'm sure you're at the other end of this camera and at the other end of my microphone. And it's a pleasure to have you here. When we from Sweden Food Tech have taken our studio to the Expo 2020 in the Swedish Pavilion in order to talk about the next gen food system. And Ragnar, I can see you now, straight from your greenhouse. It's super good to have you here. And Ragnar is perhaps not only the coolest of the entrepreneurs out there, he for sure also is the coldest entrepreneur because he comes to us straight from Iceland, and that's far north. So Ragnar, pleasure to have you here, and tell us a bit more of the stuff that you're doing, and then we'll get into a discussion on why that is so important. Please go ahead, man.
Hello, thank you, and thank you for having me. My name is Ragnar, and I am from Iceland, and my company is called Jurt, and we have a product that's called Nordic Wasabi, and that is the fresh wasabi straight from the wasabi plant, and we grow it in greenhouses in Iceland. And our idea was to use the fresh water in Iceland. That is a great resource, and I think that we don't realize it enough in Iceland, that it's so great to have all this fresh, clean water, and then also the geothermal heat and electricity from hydroelectric resources. So that's what started our idea to grow something new and exciting in Iceland.
I think this is super cool because let's start from the beginning. Iceland, for those of you who haven't been there, it looks like the moon. So when you enter Iceland on an airplane, you say, God, where have I come? And actually, they trained the first astronauts ahead of the moon landing on Iceland because that was the closest proximity on planet Earth that we had to the moon. And it tells you a bit about the landscape that you have there. But as you say, you have two things in abundance: clean water and an abundance of energy.
Yes.
And that means that you can grow virtually anything on Iceland: bananas, tomatoes, and not the least wasabi. For those of you, so how come you started growing wasabi?
Yeah, like you say, we can grow almost anything, and we have been doing that, and we have a few greenhouses when we're growing lettuce and tomatoes and cucumbers, but we wanted to do something completely different, and we were thinking how we could make a new export product. We think of it that if we use the water in Iceland and export the product, we are in fact exporting the water equivalent instead of loading the water into containers. And wasabi just hit our radar. We were really, really excited to grow wasabi because almost all wasabi in the world is fake. It's horseradish with mustard and food coloring in at least 95% of the cases. You get sushi, you get fake wasabi along with it. And we wanted to grow the real stuff and let people try how it should really be. And also, if we are going to export some vegetables from Iceland, the kilo price has to be quite high, or at least higher than on some of the vegetable crops. So that also fits well into our model.
Yes, so I mean, like, so you have a lot of natural resources, but of course, you're also very far away from most parts of the world. And I mean, the wasabi, though, it's kind of sensational because, as you say, most of the wasabi that we encounter out here in the world, that's basically horseradish plus some, some green coloring. But if once you taste real wasabi, you totally understand what all the fuss is about. And I don't know. Totally. I mean, like, I don't know if you have a wasabi root with you so that people can see what it looks like, or.
Yeah, I can grab one, and I can also share a presentation if that's okay.
Sure, absolutely. Let's try and do that so we can see it.
Okay. Yeah, it looks like it's prohibited, but I can just grab one wasabi root from the fridge. Just 30 seconds.
Yep, sure. Let's do that, Ragnar. And meanwhile, I can tell you. So what you usually do when you grind wasabi is that you take this magic wasabi root, and then you grind it against a piece of shark skin. Sharks are really tough creatures, and their skins are super good at grinding against. And of course, Iceland, being situated in the North Atlantic, I don't know how many sharks they have around there, probably some North Atlantic sharks, but that's the way how you grind wasabi. And when you grind wasabi and you try, watch out, this is a really strong tasting root, but it's super delicious. And by the way, in the background here, I'm sure Ragnar is not sitting in his greenhouse, but that's the way it looks like in the greenhouse on Iceland. And if you've ever been to Iceland, you know that they have 4 types of weather. It's like rain, snow, hail, and then rain again. And that's happening almost virtually every day. You get all of those 4 types of weathers all year round. So, and here's Ragnar's back again. I'm just telling people a bit more about Iceland, and the strange situation that you're in with rain, hail, snow, sleet, whatever it is, all things water coming down from heaven. And here you have a wasabi root.
Yes, this is how it looks like. This is our product. It looks maybe like a green carrot or something like that. And it grows up off the ground. It is the stem of the wasabi plant. And I heard you were talking about the shark skin that we have right here. So what we do is we just peel the root a little bit. Let me see. And to get the fresh wasabi, there's nothing added to it, nothing taken away from it. So it's just the fresh wasabi, whereas usually it's like a mixture of a lot of things, including the horseradish. And this is how we make it.
This is amazing.
This is fresh wasabi.
Yeah, and now you don't want to lick that plate there, or because that's kind of strong stuff.
Yeah, it is strong, but it's very, very, very good.
That is super tasty. So tell me, who is it that you export this wasabi to?
Restaurants all over Europe mostly. So we do mostly direct sales to the restaurant. So we get in touch with the chefs and deliver fresh product within 48 hours from harvest in our greenhouse in Iceland. So it's always super fresh.
That's super cool. Where does this wasabi grow naturally? Otherwise?
Naturally only in Japan, but there are some growing it in the US. We were only the second ones or so in Europe. But so it's not in very many places.
No, and I think this is interesting because that also has turned, if I understand my chef friends correctly, you're actually in Iceland growing one of the best wasabis there is on the planet. Or is that just comfortable? It is totally right?
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah. And you're doing that in a greenhouse, and that's a greenhouse not just for growing greens, but it's also a totally green house in terms of sustainability as well, because you're just using hydropower, you're just using the heat coming out of the ground of Iceland.
Yes, Correct. We are working a lot on sustainability in our production, and like I mentioned, it's just the water from the ground, the heat from the ground, so it's all purely sustainable.
I think this is really interesting because we have to round this off now, unfortunately. But I beg you all to consider the fact that Iceland might be one of the bread baskets of the world in the future, just because of the abundance of energy, fresh water, and heat. I think that's a tremendous shift of fortunes from a time when everything depended on soil and sun. So Ragnar, thank you so much for coming here and showcasing your wonderful, wonderful company. And if you can lay your hands on Ragnar's wasabi, do so. That will change your worldview, at least on wasabi. Thanks again for joining, Ragnar, and take care.
Thank you very much.
All the best to all, everyone. Okay.
Thank you.
See you soon again. And to all our friends who have joined us for this session today, and who will watch this later, maybe, perhaps, I'm very, very happy that you joined us. And we have had some amazing entrepreneurs on stage here with us today. And please come back tomorrow again, because then we continue with a host of stuff here from the stage in the Swedish Pavilion at Expo 2020 in Dubai. Over and out for me today.